A huge field of wheat stretched out before them, waving gently in the evening breeze. It was almost harvest time, and the golden stalks seemed to shimmer in the last light of the sun. At the edge of the field, beside a dusty road, stood a small crowd of people. They had gathered there because they were drawn to someone who stood among the wheat. Someone who seemed to be at peace, even as the world around him grew darker and colder. Someone they knew as Jesus. In his hand, he held a stalk of wheat, and his eyes, the color of the summer sky, seemed to hold all the secrets of the universe. There was something about his calm presence that made them feel safe, like a harbor in a raging storm, and they couldn't help but gather closer, hoping to catch every word that fell from his lips. And then he spoke. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who sowed good seed in his field. He began, his voice a gentle melody that carried over the whispering wheat, but while everyone was asleep. His enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. As he spoke, the image of a vast field filled their minds, a field where life unfolded under the watchful eye of the sun and the moon, a field where the cycle of seasons played out their eternal dance. They could almost feel the soft soil beneath their feet, smell the sweet scent of growing things, and hear the birds singing their joyful songs as they worked. But as Jesus continued, the scene shifted. The carefree laughter was replaced by the rustle of weeds growing among the wheat. The innocence of youth corrupted by the whispers of evil. The people listened intently, for they knew that in this story lay a deeper truth, a truth that had the power to change their lives forever. When the wheat had grown up, and also the weeds, then the farmer went and told his workers, "Gather up the weeds and burn them." But he said to the wheat, "Harvest first, then gather the weeds." As these words echoed in the twilight, the faces of the people in the crowd were etched with understanding. In that moment, they saw themselves as those workers, toiling in the fields of life, trying to do the right thing, trying to make sense of the world around them. They had seen the weeds growing, the people who did evil but seemed untouched by it, who laughed and danced while others suffered. They had watched the wheat grow, too, those who tried to live good lives, who reached out for kindness and compassion. But now Jesus was showing them that it wasn't their place to decide who belonged where. Their job was to keep working, to keep doing good, and leave the separating to the end, when the Master would come and sort through the harvest. As Jesus finished the parable, a hush fell over the crowd. The silence was profound, broken only by the crickets chirping their evening song. Finally, one of the men in the crowd, his face lined with years of worry and doubt, spoke up. "So, what should we do?" he asked, his voice echoing the question in all their hearts. We see the weeds growing alongside the wheat. We see the struggles of the good people, the pain and the suffering. What are we supposed to do? Jesus turned, his eyes meeting the man's gaze, and in that moment, something stirred within the man, a spark of recognition, a glimpse of hope. "Be patient," Jesus said softly, his words carrying the weight of ages past and the promise of tomorrows yet to come. Have faith in the one who watches over the harvest, for he will do the separating. Trust in him, and you will find your reward in the end." The man nodded slowly, absorbing Jesus' words. There was a depth to them, a wisdom that resonated with the deepest parts of his being. He felt a sense of calm settle over him, like a gentle wave washing away the turmoil of his thoughts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky blazed with hues of fire and gold. The people watched, mesmerized, as Jesus raised his hand and blessed them. "Go now," he said, his voice echoing the rhythm of the waves on a distant shore, "and tell the world that I am with them always. Tell them to have patience, faith, and trust in me, for I am their shepherd and they are my sheep. Tell them that I am the way, the truth, and the life, and those who follow me will never truly be alone." They looked at each other, their faces illuminated by the ethereal glow of the evening sky. A silent understanding passed between them. They had heard the parable of the wheat and the weeds. They had listened to Jesus' words. They had witnessed the beauty of the setting sun and the promise it held for a new dawn. One by one, they began to disperse, each carrying with them a piece of the evening's wisdom, a spark of the divine light that Jesus had shared. As the last sliver of the sun dipped below the horizon, the field was plunged into darkness. But in that darkness, the people saw a new light, a light that shone from within, guiding their steps, illuminating their path. They walked away from the field, carrying with them the lessons they had learned. The parable of the wheat and the weeds echoed in their hearts a reminder that life was not always easy, that good and evil intertwined, and that ultimately it was God who would bring balance to the scales of justice. Each step they took was lighter than the last, their burdens seeming smaller in the face of the wisdom they had received. The evening's teachings resonated deep within their souls, weaving a tapestry of faith, patience, and trust in God. As the stars began to peek through the deepening blue, the people went their separate ways, their footsteps soft, their voices hushed, for they were not just walking home, they were carrying a piece of the divine with them. They were the seeds of faith planted in fertile ground, watered by the teachings of love and nourished by the promise of eternal peace. The evening had been long, the lessons profound, but the rewards immeasurable. For they had spent an evening with Jesus, and in doing so, they had found a piece of themselves, a piece that had been lost but was now found. They had come as individuals, seeking answers, guidance, solace. And in the quiet communion with Jesus, they had discovered a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and a sense of hope. They had witnessed the grandeur of the wheat field, the struggle of the parable, and the promise of the blessing. And in doing so, they had glimpsed the very essence of life. The constant battle between good and evil, the unwavering hope for justice, and the ultimate triumph of faith. As they settled into their beds that night, the echoes of the evening lingered. The memory of the golden wheat field, the wisdom of the parable, and the warmth of Jesus' blessing. It was a night that would not be forgotten, a night that marked a turning point in their lives. For they had not just spent an evening with Jesus, they had gained a deeper understanding of themselves, their purpose, and their place in the grand tapestry of existence. They were no longer just people drawn to the light. They were disciples, students of life, seekers of truth, and most importantly, children of the one who loved them into existence.